I grew up in a church that didn't really worship, so I had to be trained by worship leaders that I watched and listened to, and even stuff like this is so important because I remember at 15-year-old Ryan watching an interview of Carrie Job explaining what worship was, because I just didn't have worshipers around me. I grew up in a church that really was, the way I would define it is it was pretty much dead, but I had this longing in my heart to experience more of who God was and to worship him in spirit and truth. And so I think a lot of my foundational worship training was through YouTube, watching worship leaders that I love and trust, and interviews just like this one. I know it sounds crazy, but honestly, I remember there was a 45-minute video of a conference that Carrie Job was speaking at, and she was speaking about her heart on worship. And I remember saying, I want that heart for worship. And I probably watched it 3 or 4 times over and over again, just trying to capture what her heart had captured and who Jesus was. And so that's kind of how I started. And then as I've developed and matured, I believe very, very much in mothers and fathers and being under leadership. And so I have 4 or 5 different pastors that I submit to and talk to, and they, as I'm now leading my own ministry, they speak into my ministry, and they're mothers and fathers, so they've been through it. They've been through the trial, they've been through the testing. I know this sounds crazy, but I don't really care to hear wisdom from people my own age, because I believe that it's those multiple tests and trials. You have to have a test to have a testimony. And so I want to hear the testimony of those who have been through multiple tests and now have multiple testimonies. And even the scripture talks about that our faith is rooted in the experience of seeing God come through over and over again. And so I want to hear from those who have their roots go deep because they've experienced test and trial. They've made it through, and they've seen God be faithful and come through. And so all the folks that I surround myself with are, much older than me, but I love it. I'll just sit down at coffee and I'll say, talk to me about what Jesus has been teaching you this week. And then they watch over my ministry and they'll say, hey, Ryan, we think, they kind of just corral it in. And I really appreciate that. And I think that's really, really important for our generation.
I love that shot, actually.
Amen.
Sincere in their faith? No.